Hello, I'm State Representative Kurt Mosser of the 107th District in Montour, Columbia, and Northumberland counties. Many residents of our district have been asking questions about the state budget. I'm often asked where the process stands with this year's budget and how that affects the plan that needs to be passed by June 30th of this year. On today's program, I'll pose those same questions to my guest, Majority Appropriations Chairman, Representative Bill Adolph. Representative Adolph, welcome.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad to have you. Could you explain a little bit of what your role as Appropriations Chairman is?
Okay. Well, you have a lot of standing committees in the House. The Appropriations Committee is the largest committee in the state capitol. We have 37 members altogether. The chairman of that committee is elected, okay, by the members of their caucus. Okay, so I've had the privilege and honor to serve as the Appropriations Chairman, okay, for the last 5 years, and it's a real honor. We are charged in putting together a budget that the General Assembly will vote on, and and you do this on a yearly basis.
Great. I think you do have a wide selection from all parts of the state, certainly on our side of the aisle. Can you give our viewers a little overview of what the budget process looks like from day one when the governor gives his budget address?
Yes. Second week in February, Tuesday, the governor comes in to the House chamber, and it's a joint session. The entire Senate is also present, and the governor presents his budget, okay? Presents its expenses, how things should be paid for, okay? And the total amounts, okay? That's the way it's been done every year that I have been here in Harrisburg. Unfortunately, that wasn't done this year. The governor really did not talk much about the numbers, okay, that he was seeking in his 2016-17 budget proposal. Immediately following that, Representative, as you know, there's 3 weeks worth of budget hearings, and in both the House and the Senate. And what happens is that each cabinet member, okay, the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Human Services, just to give you 3 examples. They come before the House Appropriations Committee and the Senate Appropriations Committee. Different times, and they are charged with presenting their department's budget. We, as members of the Appropriations Committee, are charged with asking questions regarding their budget. A lot of times, sometimes you get into policy as well, okay, which understandably, sometimes new policy means new spending, and that's what we are charged with. You put 3 weeks of those budget hearings together, and we then start to develop our budget, not necessarily the governor's budget, okay? A budget that we think that we can pass in the General Assembly, which is a responsible and balanced budget.
That's the key. We got to get the votes. So we have to have a budget that 103 people can agree on in the House.
Yeah, Representative, and that's one of the reasons why I've always tried to put members from all over the Commonwealth on the appropriations, because if I can convince this group of representatives, and they're from Northeast, Southwest, Southeast, okay, Central Pennsylvania, urban, rural, whatever, it makes the job a lot easier when we start bringing it in front of the entire General Assembly.
And then we go to June, or any time before June 30th, and we hopefully pass that budget.
Hopefully. Hopefully. That doesn't always take place. Obviously, we're all right now we're in uncharted waters. I mean, we put a budget, a balanced budget on the governor's desk before June 30th, 2015. The governor chose to veto the entire budget. It was $30.2 billion and balanced. The first governor in my lifetime, Representative, that vetoed an entire budget. And then as a result of, I guess, the governor's insistence on his budget proposal, there was not an awful lot of negotiating that went on between June 30th to Labor Day. We got back into session. We started hearing from our folks. We tried to do a stopgap budget. Let's get an emergency funding out there because our schools needed the funds, our hospitals needed the funds, our county services needed the funds. We tried to do an emergency, I believe it was a 90-day stopgap budget, okay? He vetoed it, okay? Back to the drawing boards, okay? What we tried to do was come up with a compromise. We increased spending a little bit, added another $100 million. That's a lot of money, $100 million. We added it, made it $30.3 billion, okay? Increased funding for education by about $400 million. It took care of over 350 state troopers, okay, for new state troopers. It funded all the ag lines. It funded all the health line items that the governor had, did not propose in his budget. And it passed the House and it passed the Senate. And once again, you know, obviously December, I guess it was December 23rd, we put it on his desk. And then about a week later, on December 29th, the governor, this time, signed the budget, but blue-lined certain line items. We're trying to figure out why he blue-lined certain items, okay, and signed on the others. You know, obviously education is the one that jumps out at us, you know, and our school districts are going to be in a financial distress probably in another 30 days.
Absolutely. I have real concerns about that. But let's talk about the spending. Let's talk about where the majority of the spending is. You know, I think education is the number one spend in the budget. Am I correct in that?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, you figure it's about 40% of our state budget, you know, and it's something that the legislature takes very seriously. There's a lot of diversity throughout the Commonwealth, okay? But when you increase basic education by $100 million, $50 million for special grants, you know, increased special ed, increased pre-K, over $400 million we increased for public education. And that money should be all out there. It should be out there. And, you know, we are able to balance our budget. We were going to have to raise some revenue, okay, because our mandated expenses are increasing. And before we raise $1 in these other line items, Representative, as you know, the cost of pensions are going up, you know, over $500 million. The Department of Corrections is going up, debt service, and then the federal mandates regarding the Department of Human Services. So that alone's about $1.4, $1.5 billion increase before we increase another line item.
And I know the governor's been talking about massive broad-based tax proposals, increases. And could we just briefly talk about a little bit of that?
Yeah. You know, the governor said in his speech in February that there's two roads that we can take. There's two roads that we can take. all right? He prefers the road that increases spending by about 11% over the year before, okay? Over his budget the year before, which it falls about $500 million more than we passed, okay? He increased it by another 11%, which brought in, which would take, over $2 billion in new taxes, okay? Or he says, make your cuts, no increases, financial collapse, okay? Well, Representative,
There is another road.
there's a middle road. There's a middle road, okay? We understand that some of our mandated expenses are increasing more than and faster than our revenue. And I understand that. We all understand that. But I run a small business. You run a small business. You know that you can't increase spending at the same time that you're trying to fix a structural deficit. One or the other. The folks back home understand, mandated expenses, and they understand, okay, let's get the Commonwealth going on the right path. But no one is receiving 11% increases. And for a $30 billion budget to receive an 11% increase, I truly believe it's excessive.
At a time when our seniors have seen no increases in their Social Security. And we're going to be taxing them, according to his proposal, he wants to tax them on their basic cable and a host of other new taxes. So it's disappointing.
Yeah, 3.4% personal income tax on our working folks. All right, that's almost a 10% increase. Our tax rate now is 3.07. And it's retroactive back to January. Okay, so you're going to probably, if we passed the budget in June, if we passed the governor's budget, you'd have to, be at 3.8, almost 4% in order to have 3.4 for the entire year.
Right.
So they would really feel it, our working folks.
Where do we go from here?
We got to put together a budget that takes care of the needs of Pennsylvanians without jeopardizing small business, okay? And I think what we have to do is we got to finish 15-16, okay? And I don't know why the governor blue-lined, 50% of the corrections budget. Well, you can't close the prisons,
right?
Okay, you can't close the prisons, right? It made no sense to me. He should not have blue-lined public education. Schools should not be in it. He should have accepted our budget that was passed by the House and by the Senate, get that passed, and then let's deal with the structural deficit for 16-17 without adding on excessive spending.
Great. Well, it was a pleasure to have you here, Representative Adolph. I really appreciate your expertise. We could talk about this for an hour. Unfortunately,
I appreciate the help that you give me on the committee as well, Kurt.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have for today's program. I'm Representative Kurt Mosser. If you have questions about what we've discussed or need assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching.